You're sitting in a group conversation. Someone just shared a story, and now there's an opening, a natural pause where you could jump in. You actually have something to say, a relevant experience, a thought that connects. It's right there, forming in your mind, but you don't say it. You tell yourself you'll wait for the right moment. Except that moment passes. Someone else fills the silence, and your contribution stays locked inside, unspoken. This happens again and again, until staying quiet isn't just a choice anymore, it's who you've become. If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. Today, we're exploring the psychology of people who prefer to listen rather than talk, not because they have nothing to say, but because something deeper is keeping their voice locked away. Picture this: you're in a work meeting, your colleagues are brainstorming ideas. You've been thinking about this problem all week, and you have a solution that could actually help. But as you prepare to speak, your mind floods with questions. Is this idea good enough? Will they think it's stupid? Maybe someone else will say it better. So you stay silent. The meeting ends. Your idea dies in your throat. Or maybe you're with friends. They're debating where to eat, what movie to watch, how to spend the weekend. You have a preference you always do, but when they ask what you think, you say, "I'm fine with anything." It's easier than risking the group won't like your suggestion. Easier than the possibility of mild disappointment crossing their faces. Perhaps you're the person who gives thoughtful advice to friends, but never shares your own struggles. You listen to their problems for hours, but when they ask how you're doing, it's always, "I'm good," or "nothing much." Not because you're fine, but because taking up space with your own needs feels uncomfortable. Selfish, even. You're not antisocial. You're not disinterested. You're just convinced that listening is safer than speaking. And somewhere along the way, being the quiet one became your entire identity. Here's what most people don't understand. Preferring to listen isn't about being naturally introverted or contemplative. For many people, it's about what happens in your brain the moment you consider speaking up. When a conversational opening appears, a pause, a question directed at you, a chance to contribute, your brain performs a split-second cost analysis. But for some people, this calculation goes haywire. You don't see a simple opportunity to share. You see a performance, a test you might fail, a moment where you could be judged and found lacking. This isn't a personality quirk. Psychology shows us this happens when your nervous system has learned that speaking up carries risk. Maybe you were interrupted repeatedly as a child. Maybe you shared something vulnerable once and were met with dismissal or mockery. Maybe you grew up in an environment where children were meant to be seen, not heard. Your brain isn't being irrational, it's protecting you based on past data. The problem is, it's using outdated information to make present-day decisions. Here's what happens when you choose silence. The anxiety drops immediately. You successfully avoided the risk of saying something wrong, being judged, or facing rejection. That relief? Your brain registers it as confirmation that you made the right choice. Psychologists call this negative reinforcement. Every time you stay quiet and nothing bad happens, your brain learns that silence equals safety. You're inadvertently training yourself to see your own voice as a threat to your social standing. This pattern isn't about being shy. It's about a nervous system that's convinced that invisibility is self-preservation. There's another layer here, perfectionism working quietly beneath the surface. You're not just thinking about what to say. You're crafting the perfect contribution, one that's insightful but not pretentious, funny but not try-hard, relevant but not attention-seeking. And while you're workshopping the ideal response in your mind, the conversation has moved on. The moment is gone. This is executive dysfunction meeting social anxiety. You genuinely want to participate. You mentally compose brilliant responses, but actually speaking them requires a level of spontaneity that feels impossible when every word needs to pass through multiple filters first. The cruel irony? The things you don't say are often more thoughtful than what others are casually sharing. But perfection is the enemy of participation. Many chronic listeners operate from a core belief, "I don't have anything valuable to add." You look at people who talk easily and assume they must have more interesting lives, better stories, smarter insights. So you assign yourself the role of audience, witness, supporting character. But here's the truth, that belief isn't based on reality. It's based on anxiety lying to you about your worth. When you do finally speak and people respond positively, do you accept that as evidence you have valuable things to say? No. You dismiss it as them being polite. You've created a closed system where no amount of positive feedback can break through because you've decided in advance that you're not interesting enough to deserve attention. Here's what happens over time. And this part matters. The pattern has consequences that build slowly. That friend who stopped asking your opinion, they didn't stop caring. They learned that you'll deflect anyway. So they've stopped putting you on the spot. Those professional opportunities that went to louder colleagues, not because they were more qualified, but because visibility creates opportunity, and you've made yourself invisible. That relationship where you always listen but never share, it's comfortable for now, but it's not intimate. True connection requires reciprocity. When you only ever take the listener role, you're accidentally creating distance while thinking you're being supportive. And there's an internal cost too. Every time you swallow your thoughts, you're reinforcing a belief that your perspective doesn't matter. You're training yourself out of self-advocacy. Your personality contracts to fit inside other people's comfort zones, and those zones get smaller each time you prioritize their ease over your own voice. People start making assumptions about who you are based on your silence. They fill in the blanks, usually incorrectly. They might see you as having no opinions, being passive, maybe even not very bright. These aren't reflections of who you are, but they become the story people tell about you in your absence. Understanding why you default to silence doesn't make it okay to never speak up, but it does remove the shame that keeps you stuck. You're not broken. You're not boring. You're a person whose nervous system learned that silence was safer than speech, and patterns learned can be unlearned. Breaking this pattern isn't about becoming the loudest person in the room overnight. It's about lowering the impossibly high bar you've set for your own contributions. Stop waiting for the perfect thing to say. Start practicing imperfect participation. Your thoughts don't need to be revolutionary to be worth sharing. That reminds me of, is enough. I was actually wondering about that too, is a contribution. Can I add something? Is a complete sentence that opens space for you. Start small in low-stakes environments. Practice speaking up when the cost of being wrong is minimal. Text a friend your actual restaurant preference instead of whatever you want. Share a small opinion in a casual group chat. Comment on a coworker's idea in a meeting, even if it's just, I think that could work. Consistency in small moments builds the skill for bigger ones. Remember this, most people want to hear from you. That belief that you're boring, that's anxiety, not data. The people who care about you aren't tolerating your presence. They genuinely want to know your thoughts. They're asking because they're curious, not because they're being polite. Make peace with thinking out loud. Not every contribution needs to be fully formed before it leaves your mouth. It's okay to say, I'm still processing this, but it's okay to change your mind mid-sentence. Real conversations aren't performances. They're collaborative, meaning making messy is normal. Practice the phrase, I'd like to share something. This simple sentence creates space for yourself without apology. It signals your intent before you've fully formulated your thought, buying you a moment to organize while claiming your conversational real estate. Set a small goal, 1 contribution per conversation, not 10. Not constant chatter, 1 thing, 1 thought shared, 1 preference stated. That's it. You can do 1 thing, and if this pattern runs deep, if it's tangled up with social anxiety, past trauma, ADHD, or depression, those things deserve professional support. Chronic silence is often a symptom of something larger that needs attention. Here's the truth, silence feels like safety, but it's actually disappearing. It trades comfort today for invisibility tomorrow. Your voice matters, not because you need to fill every silence, but because you deserve to take up space in your own life. Because relationships require reciprocity. Because the people who care about you want to know you, not just the carefully curated, always agreeable version, but the real one with opinions and preferences and ideas. You don't have to fix everything at once. Just 1 thought shared, 1 opinion offered, 1 moment of letting yourself be seen, even imperfectly. Because the alternative, spending your entire life as an observer in your own story, isn't protecting you. It's just making your world smaller. You're capable of this. Your thoughts matter. Your perspective has value. Start where you are, 1 voice at a time. If you found value in this video, hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And if you want to dive deeper into psychology, click this video on the screen right now. It's the perfect next step. I'll see you there.